This is the factoring review for your factoring test. On each of these slides, I have one problem. So if you understand any of the problems, you can skip through them easily. I'm only doing one problem per page. So I'm going to start out with question number 1, which is just asking us to subtract. I am not factoring here. No beats, no roller coaster, nothing. I'm just subtracting these things and combining like terms. So what I'm going to do first is I notice that there's this minus sign here. I need to make sure that I distribute that to every term in the set of parentheses after. I'm not touching the first set of parentheses, so I'm just going to rewrite this first set of parentheses exactly as it is. Now this is where I start distributing. My positive 5x squared that I had here now becomes negative 5x squared. My negative 3x now becomes positive 3x. And my positive 2 now becomes negative 2. Now at this point in time, all I'm doing is combining my like terms. So I see that I have 3x squared minus 5x squared. That gives me a total of negative 2x squared. I also see that I have x plus 3x. That gives me a total of 4x. And then I also have my plus 6 and my minus 2, which gives me a plus 4. So all I'm doing is combining my like terms. Things that can be combined together go together. So my 3x squared minus 5x squared, I have negative 2x squared. This does not change to x to the 4th power. I'm still dealing with x squared and x squared. It's just how many of them I have. The next question is very similar to question number 1, except here I don't have a negative sign that I have to distribute. So I'm going to solve this problem and basically just pretend that all I'm doing is combining like terms and I don't have any parentheses. So I'm looking for things that I have in common. So 2x squared plus 4x squared, I get 6x squared. I also have 6xy minus 8xy gives me negative 2xy. And the last thing that I have is y squared plus 3y squared. That gives me 4y squared. Okay, so now I'm getting into multiplying. And what I need to do here is distribute. So I'm going to take my negative 4x to the 4th, this thing right out front, and I need to distribute that in to everything in the parentheses after. So I'm going to start with this 2x squared y cubed. Negative 4 times 2 gets me negative 8. Sorry, that's kind of hard to see. Let's change that. Negative 8. X to the 4th times x squared will give me x to the 6th. Because my rule with multiplying variables is that you add the exponents. So in multiplying variables, make sure you add exponents. So x to the 4th times x squared gets me x to the 6th. Because I don't have a y in the thing that I'm multiplying, this y that I have right here just comes right on down, y cubed. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to multiply this negative 4x to the 4th times my middle term. Okay, so negative 4 times negative 5 is positive 20. X to the 4th times x, well, if you remember, there's a little teeny tiny 1 right there on the x. That's the exponent. So x to the 4th times x to the 1st power, I end up with x to the 5th, and again, my y just comes on down. And the last thing I'm going to do is multiply my 4x to the 4th times my 3rd term. I get negative 12 x 4 plus 3 to the 7th. So that's your answer. That's all you're doing is leaving it just like that. This problem is similar to the one we just did, the number 3 multiply one, except here I have two things being multiplied by two things. So we have to do what's called double distribution. I'm going to take my 2b, multiply times my 7b, then my 2b times my negative 6. Then round 2, this is why it's called double distribution, is multiplying 8 times 7b and 8 times negative 6. So let's go back and let's do that. 2b times 7b. Well, 2 times 7 is 14, and b times b, they both have little 1s here, so when I add the 1s, I get b squared. Now I have 2b times negative 6. Negative 6 times 2 is negative 12b. Now I move on to that second half. I'm multiplying 8 times 7b. 8 times 7 gets me 56, a positive 56b. And then 8 times negative 6 is negative 48. I'm almost done. Okay, there's one last thing I have to do here, and it's because I have this here. Negative 12b plus 20, or 56b. I have to make sure I combine my like terms. So my final answer is going to be 14b squared, negative 12 plus 56, I get plus 44b minus my 48. So what I did is I went through, I did double distribution, also known as FOIL, and then I combined my like terms to get my final answer. Okay, so number 5, now starts the factoring. Reminder, the very, very first thing I will always, always, always do when I'm factoring is look for a GCF. That's what I want to start with here. So between 12 and 18, I have a GCF of 6. So I'm going to take that 6, I'm going to write it out front. In my parentheses, I know I'll be left with a 2, because 12 divided by 6 is 2, and a positive 3, because 18 divided by 6 is 3. Now I move on to my x's. I have x cubed and x squared. The smallest exponent is the biggest amount I can take out, because I can't ask for like more than the number of x's I have. So since I only have an x squared here, that's what I can take out, x squared. In my first term, if I had 3 and I took away 2 of them, well, I now only have 1. And in my last term, if I had 2 and I took away 2, I don't have any left. So I'm not even going to write an x there. Now I move on to my y's. I have y to the 4th power and y to the 1st power. So I can only take out one y. If I had 4 and I took away 1, what I still have left is y cubed. And in my second term, if I had 1 and I took away 1, I don't have any left. So this is your answer. Okay, I'm still factoring completely. I believe I'm going to have a common factor here. So, okay, first I'm looking at my numbers. 16, 32, 24. My common factor there is 8. If I take out an 8, what I have left is 16 divided by 8 gives me 2. 32 divided by 8, negative 4. 24 divided by 8, 3. Okay, so I'm done with my numbers. Now I have to move on to my letters. So actually, I'm going to erase this 8. Nope, I can't do that. Okay, give me a second here. I need more than just an 8 out front here. So I'm going to make some space to actually write my GCF. Because I'm going to have my 8, but I also need to have some letters, right? We also need to look at our M and our N. So I'm going to put that 8 back. We know we had an 8 that came out. But now I'm going to look at my M's. So M to the 5th, M to the 4th, M to the 3rd. The most that I can take out there is my M to the 3rd power. because that's my lowest exponent. Now, if I had 5 and I took away 3, I still have 2 left. Sorry, that's kind of hard to read. Let's put this back in. M squared. Here, if I had 4 and I took away 3, I only have 1 left. In my last term, if I had 3 and I took away 3, I don't have any more, so I'm not going to write any m's there. Now I look at my n. N1, N7, N3. So my smallest exponent is just the 1, so I can only take out one n. And what I'm left with, if I had 1 and I took away 1, I don't have any left, so I don't put anything there. In my middle term, if I had 7 and I took away 1, I have 6 left. In my last term, if I had 3 and I took away 1, I have 2 left. So this is your answer. All right, number 7. Very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check for a GCF. GCF between 15, 10, negative 12, and negative 8. 15, 10, 12, 8. I don't have a GCF. Okay, I don't have a GCF. Okay, next thing I do is I count how many terms I have. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. Anytime I see 4 terms, I am thinking grouping. So I need to take this problem and I need to solve this by grouping. I'm factoring by grouping. So here goes, group, 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 group. Now I'm looking at my first set of parentheses. I need to find the GCF between these two things. So in between there, my GCF is 5. Why? Remember, you're not just taking out numbers, you're not just taking out letters, you can take out both. So because I have 15 and 10, I know my GCF is 5, and I have a y in each of them. So my y has to come out. And I'm left with 3 plus 2a. My minus sign comes down, and I'm looking for my GCF between 12 minus 8a. So my GCF there is going to be 4. I can't take out an a because my 12 doesn't have an a. I'm left with 3 minus 2a. Now, remember though, if this is a minus, I have to change this sign. So that's not a minus, this should be a plus. If I have a minus here, I have to change the sign right after it. Okay, perfect. So look, I have the same thing. I have 3 plus 2a in both of those spots. So my 3 plus 2a comes down. And then my second set of parentheses gets filled up with the things that were left by themselves. 5y minus 4. And that is your answer. All right, number 8, factor completely. So I'm looking for a GCF. That's my very, very first step. Do I have a GCF? Nope, I don't, because in front of this I have a 1. So obviously I'm not going to have a GCF. So after I have a GCF, or don't have a GCF, I'm looking for how many terms I have. Here I have 1, 2, 3 terms. Anytime I have 3 terms, I'm putting on the beats. So here come my beats. I circle up this 1 that's in front and my 3. I want factors of 3 that are going to subtract to 2. Factors of 3 that subtract to 2. Oh, well, that's simple. I have 3 and 1. Okay, so I want to subtract. So 3x minus 1x. Now what's important is my x squared comes down. X squared comes down, I'm going to put it right in front. X squared plus 3x minus 1x. This minus 3 comes down. Now, how many terms do you have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we solve by grouping. So I group up my first 2 things, my last 2 things. My GCF in my first set of parentheses is just an x. I'm left with x plus 3. In my second set of parentheses, I have no GCF, so my minus just comes down. Remember, you have to switch your middle sign there in that second set of parentheses, so I have x plus 3. Perfect. I'm left with two things that are exactly the same in that set of parentheses, so that comes down. And then my second set of parentheses gets filled up with the things that were left alone, which in this case is x minus, there's a 1 there. Don't forget about that 1. 1. That's your answer. All right, next problem, number 9. Very first thing I always look for is a GCF. I see that I do have a GCF here. My GCF is 3. So I'm going to take my GCF out to the front. I'm left with x squared minus x minus 12. Now I look at how many terms I have. 1, 2, 3 terms. So 3 terms, I'm putting on the beats. So here they come. I'm going to circle up. I've got this 1 here in front. So my 1 gets circled up with my 12. I multiply 1 and 12, I get 12. So I'm looking for factors of 12 that subtract to -1. That subtract to a -1. Factors of 12 that subtract to 1. Okay, I know what my numbers are. They're 4 and 3. Okay, so I need to use 4 and 3. I'm going to bring down my x squared. I'm going to bring down my minus 12. And I'm going to take this minus x, and I'm going to split it up into minus 4x plus 3x. My 4 has to be negative. That's how I get my -1. So if I have -4 plus 3, that gives me -1. All right, I'm back to 4 terms, so here comes my grouping again. I need to go through and I group up my first 2, my last 2. My GCF in my first set here is just an x, and I'm left with x minus 4. In my second set, my GCF is 3. And I'm left with x minus 4. So perfect, again, my x minus 4s match up. That's exactly what I want to happen. And then my second set of parentheses gets filled with these things here, so x plus 3. Now it's very important. You cannot forget this 3 that you pulled out at the very bottom. That has to come all the way down. In fact, I recommended to you guys that you write it right away. As soon as you take that 3 out, you bring it down to the bottom. Because now this is my answer. It includes that 3. All right, number 10, factor completely. First thing I'm always going to do is look for a GCF. Do I have a GCF in this problem? I do. My GCF is 4. So I bring my 4 out to the front. I'm left with 2x squared plus 7x plus 3. Now I count how many terms I have. 1, 2, 3. Oh, the beats. I'm putting on the beats. So let's circle up our 2 and our 3. 2 times 3 is 6. So I'm looking for factors of 6 that add to 7. Factors of 6 that are going to add to 7. Oh, well, that's 6 and 1. Okay, so what I do is I bring down my 2x squared. Oh, bring down your 4. Don't forget about your 4. So my 2x squared comes down, my 3 comes down, and my 7x here in the middle gets split up into plus 6x plus x, or 1x. I don't have to write the 1, though. And now I am grouping. So I group my first 2 and my last 2. Here my GCF is 2x. I'm left with x plus 3. Here I don't have a GCF, so just x plus 3. And oh, look at that. My x plus 3's match up, which is exactly what I want to happen. I bring them down together as one thing, and my second set of parentheses is filled with 2x plus 1. This is your answer, including that 4 that we took out at the very beginning of the problem. All right, number 11, again, factor completely. Very, very first thing I look for is a GCF. I don't have a GCF here, so now I need to look at how many terms I have. 1, 2 terms. Okay, 2 terms, I have a couple of different options. So let's see, 2 terms. My options are 1, difference of squares. Option 2, difference or sum of cubes. So those are my 2 options. If I read through this problem, 64x squared. Oh, 64x squared. So this is a difference, because of this minus sign, of squares. Difference of squares are really, really simple. I know 2 sets of parentheses, plus in one, minus in the other. That's my bare bones that I can set up immediately. Now I just take the square root and split this 64 up into 8 and 8. 64, the square root of that is 8 and 8. But I also have this x squared, and the x squared is stuck like glue to that 64. So when I split up that x squared, I get x, and it has to be stuck like glue to my 8's. So 8x and 8x. And my 81, I'm also going to split up by taking the square root. I get 9 and 9. So this is my answer for number 11. Number 12. Very, very first thing I do is I look for a GCF. Here, I see that I do have one. My GCF is 2. Leaves me with 16 minus 9x squared. I have 2 terms. With 2 terms, I'm looking for either difference or sum of cubes or difference of squares. Well, I have a difference, and if I read my problem, 16 minus 9x squared. X squared. So I know I'm dealing with difference of squares. Again, my 2 comes down. I have 2 sets of parentheses. Plus in one, minus in the other. My 16 gets broken up into 4 and 4. My 9x squared gets broken up into 3x and 3x. That's it. Number 13, looking for a GCF. GCF, oh, well, I don't have one, because if one of my factors is 1, I don't have a GCF. So now I have 2 terms, 1 term, 2 terms. It's a plus sign, so I'm thinking it's got to be sum of cubes, which does make sense because I see an x cubed here. So I know I'm doing sum of cubes, which is going to be my roller coaster. So I set up my roller coaster. It's that small front cart and the whole rest of the roller coaster. I break 64x cubed up into 4x times 4x times 4x. And 1 gets broken into 1 times 1 times 1. So I have one of my 4x's gets to come up front, and one of my 1's gets to come up front. The rest of the people need to be buckled into the back, so I take these other 2 4x's, I multiply them together, which gives me 16x squared. And then 2 of my 1's get to sit in back. 1 times 1 is just 1. Everybody's buckled in. We're ready to go on the roller coaster. So we're going to loop, loop, and we end up with a 4x in the middle of our problem. The way we got that was by multiplying these 2 things up front that get looped up and brought into the middle here. Now the roller coaster ride's over, we just have to go through and see what type of people were these. People that screamed or puked. So remember, scream or puke stands for same sign. We started with a plus, which means I need a plus right here. Opposite sign. We started with a plus, so I need the opposite of that, which is a minus sign right here. And my very last sign is always going to be a plus. So this is your answer to this problem. We used roller coaster method to factor a sum of cubes. All right, so I'm looking at this problem. I'm looking for a GCF. I don't see a GCF, so now I need to count how many terms I have. Got one term, two terms. So because I have one term, two terms, I know it's either sum or difference of cubes or difference of squares. I see an x cubed. I know this is difference of cubes. So again, I have to set up my roller coaster, and I got to see who's riding. 8 is the same as 2 times 2 times 2, and 125x cubed is the same as 5x times 5x times 5x. So it's time to buckle everybody up. One of my 2's comes up front, 2 of my 2's going back. 2 of my 2's I write as 4 because 2 times 2 is 4. One of my 5x's comes up front, 2 of my 5x's going back. And I write 2 of my 5x's as 25x squared because I multiplied them. 5 times 5 is 25, and x times x is x squared. Now that everybody's buckled in, we have to do our loop-de-loop. We end up with 10x right here in the middle because I multiplied together the things that I circled up in that loop-de-loop. And the last thing I have to do is see if they screamed or puked. So my same sign would be a minus sign because that's what I started with in my problem. My opposite sign is a plus, and my very last sign is always a plus sign. So that's your answer to this problem. We factored by difference of cubes. And I'm on my last problem now, number 15. First thing I'm going to do is look for a GCF. GCF, okay, between 16 and 48 and 36, my GCF is going to be 4. That leaves me with 4x squared minus 12x plus 9. Okay, within that, first of all, I'm going to bring my 4 down so I don't forget about it. And then I count here. I have 3 terms, 1, 2, 3. Anytime I have 3 terms, remember, I'm going to put on the beats. Put on the beats. So here they come. My beats are going to circle around my 4 and my 9, which gives me factors of 36 that are going to add to negative 12. Factors of 36 that are going to add to negative 12. Okay, so I figured out we have negative 6 and negative 6. When I add those together, I get my negative 12. Okay, so remember, we bring down our 4x squared, we bring down our plus 9, but then in the middle, we change this minus 12x to minus 6x minus 6x. And then we have to do our grouping. So I group up my first 2 things, my last 2 things. Because this is a minus, I change this sign to a minus. And I look for my GCF. My GCF in the first thing here is 2x, which leaves me with 2x minus 3. And in my last set here, my GCF is 3, which leaves me with 2x minus 3, which is perfect because my 2x minus 3's match up. They come down as 1, and then my second set of parentheses is filled up with whatever's left, 2x minus 3. Oh, that's so interesting. It's the same exact thing. So I can either write my answer as it is, just like that, or I can say, okay, well, my 2x minus 3, I really have 2 of them. So that could also be your answer there. So please go back, rewatch some of these problems if you had questions about them. Email me if you have questions. Otherwise, please study. Your test is tomorrow. I will see you in class.